Yeah, it's good. We knew this non-conference slate was going to be a grind, playing a really physical playoff contender in Southern Utah, bookended by a couple FBS opponents. But our guys are excited just to kind of flush last week and get going. I know New Mexico is kind of I say they're the opposite of UNLV from the standpoint of, I think when you're playing UNLV, you have a lot of unknowns, and you see all these big names that guys have heard of who are dropping down, playing in this grand stadium. And then you get the opportunity to go play UNM, which is an opponent who we're at least very familiar with from the staff standpoint, have a ton of respect for Jason Eck and what he's done throughout his career, not just while he was at U of I, but, what he did before that. South Dakota State, we played him and have a ton of respect for what he did there. But then a lot of these players are, it's like the Big Sky All-Star team in Albuquerque. And I think that's probably the right path to go, and that's where my heart would tug, is going to win with known commodities. To have Scott Trey Humphrey and Damon Bankston in your backfield, I don't know if there's any FBS team that has a better backfield than that, or at least feeling good about it, having some guys that are competitively excellent and ready to go. Obviously, their staff does a heck of a job. They'll have a new DC that we didn't see last year, but Coach Eck has a pretty good thumbprint on his philosophy of what he wants on defense. Even when it went from 2023 to 2024, the identity was still similar.
Cody, tell me about your quarterback situation. How does that look for this week?
Yeah, so JC played hurt last week, should have had surgery before we played Southern Utah, but opted not to. And just because it was something where we knew he was going to be out for a month and trying to figure out when was the best time to do it. There were a lot of times, there's never a perfect time to do it, but there was a lot of deliberation between our medical staff, our staff, and his family about what was going to be best. And he really wanted the opportunity to try and play in that football game last week. And for his development as a leader and as a young man, I thought he deserved that opportunity and played well enough to earn that opportunity. But he did end up having a procedure, and he'll be out for the foreseeable future. But we love him and appreciate him, and he'll be back. I just can't tell you when.
Mm-hmm. So who starts in his place?
We're still trying to figure that out right now. I think the coaching staff feels really good with both of them. I think Davis Harson has done a great job kind of coming on from an operational standpoint. Jackson Sharman is a guy who we obviously feel comfortable with, and probably would have started last week in the absence of JC. But I think they both deserve an opportunity to play. They'll both play. I don't know who will take the first snap, but you'll see them both in the game.
Cody, are there any other changes? I know your running back situation was kind of in flux too.
Yeah, Dason got hurt in the UNLV game at the end of it, and then wanted to go but couldn't. And then obviously losing Robert on the fourth play of the game hurts, and then Brett is your third, and that's his first college football game ever, and he was rushing back from his injury. So that's going to be kind of a running back by committee piece. Carson Sudbury is a guy who we know can absolutely do it, has kind of always been in the mix, and he'll probably start for us. But you'll see, Titan Mason is a true freshman. You'll see him play a little bit. And then hopefully Brett continues to feel better, and we can get him out there in a larger role.
What about Hunter Roddy? What happened? Where is he on this?
He was sick last week. I can't disclose what, but he was unable to be with the team and travel. Hunter Roddy will play this week, but he was someone who could not be with the team last week. It was a tough week for the RBs.
I don't want to just focus solely on injury situation, but
yeah.
It seems to be having a big impact. Tell me about your offensive line. Where are you there?
Yeah, so Jorgen Miller got hurt in week 1, and then Jake Hellman got hurt as well, but played through it. The O-line group, we were down some depth guys. Our starters were mostly intact with the exception of Jorgen. But we should get some guys back, this week. I think, a lot of guys in the 2 deep had been injured, but they'll be back. I expect our O-line to be mostly intact. I believe it'll be the same starting 5 as last week. We'll have Messiah Moye play guard, just because Jorgen's not quite ready to come back. He probably could if it was an absolute emergency, but knowing his situation and his history, he's had 2 knee surgeries already since he's been here. That's not something that we want to rush. But I feel good about those guys. Our lack of performance on the offensive line last week I say it's all coaching. It was their coaching doing a great job. I scour over every piece of tape for 2 years, and to show up in like a 3-1 stack was something brand new, and that's the benefit of them being able to play in the first game. And they did some things that made it difficult, so a lot of things that we wanted to do, we didn't have a lot of reps at it. And then for us, credit to them for coming up with a really good creative plan that we hadn't seen before, and also the ownership falls on us to get those guys ready to play and to have multiple contingency plans ready to go, because everybody's always going to have a curveball. You don't think it's going to be that drastic, but you always got to be ready for it, and that's our fault for not having them prepared.
Tell me what I'm not an expert on football alignments. Tell me what they were lining up in.
Yeah, so, I mean, the general way to say is 3 down or 4 down, right? 4 down lineman, 3 down lineman. They played a 3 down line front, which is not what they do. I mean, they played us exclusively in 4 down last year. They've been exclusively 4 down against 10 personnel for the last 3 years. They did a little bit of 3 down in 2022, but it was not kind of the soft bear front. It was not 5 gaps covered. It was 3 gaps covered and guys kind of floating around, which is something that we'll see from our defense. So that was something that our guys hadn't gotten a rep at in training camp. You do some of that stuff on the goal line, but that's just a totally different package than what you're doing in rundown situations, and you're not going to see the exotic types of blitzes on the goal line that you're going to see on first and second down in the middle of the field. So they played a 3 down front with a 1 backer stacked and then 2 other outside backers on either side, and then they were shading the center, making it really difficult. So, sometimes you'd have to treat it like a 4 down, even though you had 3 down, and sometimes you'd have to treat it like a true 3 down front, just because whether or not the center is shaded or not is going to affect, the possibilities of double teams that you have available. But it was, we ended up having a good plan and getting to, I say, the quote unquote the perfect calls, but we just didn't have enough reps, and it was one guy on the 3 times you call your gap scheme play that you would want to run against that 3 down front. The 3 times you call it, it's just one guy didn't quite get there, whether it was the backside guy didn't hold his gap appropriately, the puller didn't fit it appropriately, we called the wrong type of double team versus that front. And again, those are things that our guys are capable of doing, and it's because of the curveball and the lack of reps that they had against it. And that's, we had a really big discussion about it afterwards and about the importance of being able to player-based rules, and we got to do a better job getting them fixed early and recognizing what's going on early in the game to make those adjustments, because all 3 times we called basically the perfect call against that front. It should have been an explosive run, like a 20-yard gasher, and we didn't get it off. And there's a little bit of, I don't want to say like buyer's remorse, but as a play caller, you call something that should have worked 3 times. I mean, how many times are you going to call it before you stop calling it? Because woulda, coulda, shoulda. I mean, there are a lot of things that should go well in life, but if it happens 3 times and doesn't go your way, I don't know if I'm going to keep going back to that same well.
So in playing Jason Eck, coach that you've played against a lot now, you have film, you know what his tendencies are. How do you prepare for he switches something up on you and you're not ready for it, or you don't know? Yeah,
I mean, I think the things you try and always play a little bit of a guessing game. You never go into the game and say, hey, they're going to do what they did on film. You always know there are going to be some changes, but it might be, hey, they're a 4 down team. Maybe they're going to jump into 3 down on 3rd down. They bring a bunch of field pressure. Maybe they're going to bring field pressure with the nickel and the safety rather than the 2 backers, because you expect different personnel there. But going against Coach Eck, he's always had a ton of wrinkles. If you look at the subtle things they've done differently the last 2 years we played them. But like last year they played a little bit more 3 down. It was something that we weren't totally unfamiliar with, but making sure we understand who the personnel is, because the beauty of what they did last year is they were playing the 3 down front with the same personnel, so you really had to identify who their rushers were. They had that number 11, I believe his last name was Johnson. I don't know where he ended up going, but was a really good player, and he'd play all 3 of those linebacker spots, and he'd be the blitzer. So it's not, it's 3 down, let's block it this way. It's 3 down, let's block that guy.
So in a game where, New Mexico goes up to Michigan, plays in the big house, 100,000 people.
Yeah.
When you're reviewing that film in preparation for our game against them, what do you sort of look for? Because in a similar way, that's they're playing up against an opponent, and you might not see everything that you want to see.
Yeah. Again, it's kind of like playing another week 1 game. You're watching a lot of the same film that we would have watched last year. Watched a couple of their playoff games, Idaho's playoff games last year, and then trying to blend that with the Memphis tape and then the Ohio tape that their new DC was at Memphis for a year and then was at Ohio for 2 years. So you're watching 3 years of tape, and you could prepare for 1,000 different fronts, but that this guy comes from Memphis, so you're probably going to see a little bit more 3 down from them in some certain packages, but Coach Eck wants to be a 4 down team. So you're kind of preparing your hybrid Memphis looks and those looks, but also knowing that he was at Memphis last year, wasn't calling it at Memphis, he was calling it at Ohio. Ohio looks a lot like what Idaho looks like, but with a more exotic 3 down package. So You're trying to make your best guess. I think probably the biggest things you try to take is from when they called it. What are their blitz tendencies? What are their short yardage tendencies? Are they going to blitz a lot on first and second down, or are they not? Structurally, you're never going to know exactly what they want to do early on in the game, but usually people, I'm sure I have a ton of tendencies of when I like to take shots, what I like to do on 1st and 10, what I like to do when I get in the high red zone, things like that. So you won't know exactly, but you try to get a general feel of what guys are doing.
Switching to the defense, you guys have really struggled to stop the run these first 2 games. How do you address that?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing in week 1 was not so much gap integrity as it was just tackling. I mean, that kid who plays for UNLV is pretty darn good, and he's faster than anybody we have on our team. So if he breaks a tackle, it's a long ways to go for the next help. This week was probably a little bit more disappointing just because you saw more gap integrity errors, and that's something that, it's funny. I've talked a lot in the last week or so about everybody talks about the difference of, everybody in America last year thinks you should be a 4-down team. Everybody does. And then your 4-down team, you're like, oh, well, why are there all these big plays happening? It's like, guys, you have to pick one or the other. You can be a 1-gap defense and have less help, but you have somebody there to make every play, but if they miss the play, it's a long way to go for help. Or you can have nobody particularly assigned to that, but you have 2 people there that could help. So it's like, do you want to bleed out or chop your arm off? It is the worst case scenario, but also on the other end is we have the ability to play suffocating defense. But there's a lot more accountability that has to take place between our players and our staff of making sure that you're reviewing those gaps all the time versus every formation and fit. Because every D lineman loves to play in a 1-gap team because I'm going to have less double teams. Well, yeah, that's true. But if you also get out of your gap, it's going to be a 20-yard run. And I don't care if it's 3rd down, 1st down, 2nd down. If we tell you you're in the A gap, your bottom better stay in the A gap. Because if you get in the B gap, there's nobody in the A gap. You can't 2-gap that, right? Because we're telling the linebacker to go to the B gap. You got to stay in the A gap. If you get your eyes in the backfield, or you're trying to guess on backfield sets, or trying too hard to make a play, and you're running the B gap and they hit in the A gap, it's a problem. So for us, it's just, I've talked a lot about, guys, we have a lot of talent and depth on this football team, but we don't have a lot of experience. And so you have a guy, and I don't want to name names, but we have some guys that are really, really good players for us, but they've never had to be the guy that has to make the play on 3rd down. They've never had to be the guy that's going to have to play 80 plays a game. They've been playing 10, and it's fun to run in and do a good job, but 80 plays a game, where you got to be in the right gap, 80 plays a game, that's hard for a guy maturity-wise to know, I'm tired, I'm hurt, I think this play is happening, it doesn't matter. This is your gap. And for guys to learn, just build that maturity of being accountable for 4 quarters of a football game, whether they're sore, tired, confused. Those are all things as a staff that where I say our biggest task as a staff this year is just kind of handling the mentorship of our team. And I'll just say jumping over just even, handling a guy like Dason Brooks. Like Dason Brooks is an elite back. We all understand that, but he's never been the guy that's had to be. He's never had to play 80 plays a game. He's never had to be, hey, you better hurry back because there's nobody else to carry the load if you don't. And that's a lot for a young man to grow into from an identity standpoint, is playing college football is fun until you have to be accountable for every mistake, whether you feel good or feel terrible for 80 plays a game. And that's where we're trying to continue to grow and mentor these guys. And we love them, and they know that. But there is some growth that needs to happen with our team, and there's some growth that needs to happen with our staff of the awareness of making sure you handle those guys appropriately in order to get them to play their best.
Cody, can you talk to me a little bit about New Mexico's offense? Coach, I know, likes to dig into his bag of tricks a lot. I mean, that play at Michigan was just really well done. But in general, can you give me an idea as to what New Mexico is trying to do?
Yeah, I mean, they're going to be multiple personnel. I mean, I think probably the difference that you're going to see between Southern Utah and Idaho, both teams that want to run it, both teams that are really adequate in the play action game. I'd say Coach Eck does a really good job of making stuff look the same. So it's your wide zone, your tight zone, your play action all look similar. And that's what the hardest part about them is they're going to make you play sideline to sideline and heavy personnel, but also have the ability to get in light personnel. They had some fantastic receivers when he was up at the University of Idaho, and they've done a good job kind of restocking the talent base there. But whether it's having multiple running backs on the field, multiple tight ends on the field, they're gonna make it hard for you to match their personnel because you can't just stay in one personnel group against them, because if you try and fit it with nickel when they're in 12, you're going to get punched in the mouth. If you try and stay in base when they're in their light personnel, they're going to out-athlete you and get you on the perimeter, and they're going to call force pulls and make it extended triple option with slide routes and flat routes in the run game. They're trying to run base run schemes with multiple personnels and having multiple answers, whether it's play action shots or pulls and throws for the quarterback. And I think, they do a great job. I think the hardest part about that offense is, can you recruit the tight ends that it takes to be really successful doing it? And they did a good job of it at Idaho, and I think they've done a good job of it so far from what I can see in New Mexico. But, they even lost that Kean Snead kid from Weber who went to New Mexico, and he ended up at Kentucky. It's hard to keep good tight ends now, and it must have, whether it's, Coach X's charm or whatever they got going, maybe it's just the scheme. They do a good job of finding them.
Cody, I guess, basic question then, Saturday, what do you have to do to win?
What do you have to do?
Because I know you guys would really like to get a win right now, given the schedule and everything.
Yeah, I want to get a win every week. That's not, you're never playing to win on a scale of 7 of 10. You're never playing to win, every single week, and that's where, it's so funny for me. I think I'm pretty even keeled on most stuff, but after the UNLV game, I'm like, hey guys, pump the brakes. We did some stuff well, we got a lot to fix. And then after Southern Utah, you're saying, hey guys, pump the brakes. We laid an egg in many areas, but we also did a lot of good stuff. But there's clear areas that we got to get better. And there's clear things that we got to fix. And that doesn't matter who you're playing. If you turn the ball over, you're not going to have a shot to win. And that was kind of the issue against UNLV. Is, yeah, you played great, but you turn it over 4 times, you ain't winning that game. That's an issue. I say anytime you're playing an FBS team, and I say quote unquote punching up, you got to win the turnover battle. I'm not trying to say you can't win without it, but if you want to say, hey, this is the recipe to win the football game, you got to hold them under 150 yards rushing. You can't. And I know that you're like, oh, that's a tall task. Well, you just asked me how you win the football game. This is a tough win. You got to hold them under 150 yards rushing. You got to win the turnover battle by 2. We always say that on offense, you kind of assume that, hey, at some point you're going to have 1. Most teams assume you're going to have a gimme. So you're kind of shooting for 3, but you got to have 2. You got to win the turnover battle. You got to stop them from rushing. Then we got to create some explosive plays in the pass game and not throw for a lot of yards. You got to create explosives in the pass game. And then you got to be able to run the ball for first downs and touchdowns. If we don't run the ball for first downs and touchdowns, we will not throw for 5 touchdowns and beat these guys. It just won't happen. You're going to have to run for multiple scores and multiple first downs. You're going to have to create explosives, not throw it 50 times and you had 250 yards passing. You're going to have to throw it 25 times and have 400. And just because you're going to say that generally they're going to be bigger up front, and you have to create those, the FBS teams, you have to create chunk plays, because you're not going to be as, you say, with the size and the length and the stuff that you're dealing with up front, you're not going to be as efficient in those games, because your matchups, you're going to lose one-on-ones at a higher rate against FBS teams. That's just the reality of it. So it's running the ball when you have to run it, stopping them from running the ball, creating explosive plays, and winning the turnover battle. And I've been a part of 2 FBS wins, and in every one, that's kind of been the recipe. We won by at least 2 turnovers, and they never ran for 150, and we threw for a lot of yards. And a lot of yards on fewer pass attempts, to be fair. You have to run the ball, but if you throw it 50, everybody who throws it 50 times should throw for 300 yards. That's not like, oh, you're kicking butt. If you throw it 20 times and have 300 yards passing, that's a good day.
Just a quick question. How long do you think Brooks and Freeman are going to be out?
Freeman probably the majority of the year, based on what happened. But would love to find better news. He had an MRI yesterday, and we'll be talking about that with him today, seeing what the best case scenario is. Dason, it's just those things can be finicky. Some guys it's 1 week, some guys it's 3 weeks, some guys it's 4, some guys it's on and off, and you don't really want to put him at risk to do that. And then with Brett, he's trying to make it back, but he's clearly a different guy from a running standpoint. If any of us went through what he went through, you'd be probably another 2 or 3 weeks, but he's a tough sucker. So they'll be out for a while. Hopefully get him back by conference play is kind of what we're hoping for, but with Robert probably longer.